twisted my arm to be here today. Really appreciate it. Must be payback for all the times I made her sing in front of people like today. It's all good. She did promise me cookies later. I did hear a little talk about a birthday for a certain service. I think they call the Marine Corps. Yeah? Do you know what September 17th, 1947 is? No? Colonel? The Air Force birthday, or as General Hap Arnold would call it, Independence from the Army Day. Yes, we were part of the Army going back to World War II and World War I. But it became very apparent that we were so superior in our fighting skills that we had to be separated and given our own little world. And I see you got a couple of Purple Hearts there. Yeah, we learned to duck, okay? Just kidding. So, I'm Alberto Castillo. I am from Woodland, a little community just north of here. Yes, I was born and raised there. My parents were Mexican immigrants. I had nobody really growing up to influence me towards the military as I was growing up, except for two people in particular. My scoutmaster, who was very influential in my life growing up, Wes McKean. He was in Korea. And then my best friend's dad was in the Marine Corps and fought in Iwo Jima and survived that battle. I'm very proud of him. He did lose his life later on due to all the chemicals and asbestos that he had to be around in the service. Lung cancer. So that's a sad ending to his story. But he was an important man in my life, and for some reason he always influenced me into joining the military. So I joined in 1977. 77 was a weird time. 1975 is when Vietnam ended. The last troops were pulled out in that time. So the scars are still very recent for our Vietnam veterans and for those coming in. I was actually called names myself years after Vietnam was over, and even though I had never served there. But that's okay. I took it with a grain of salt. I served, however, in the age of about 30 years old in Desert Storm. I was shipped off overseas to a unit, Air Force Special Operations Command. I was a medic. I flew combat search and rescue. In that time, I flew 43 combat missions, either in Iraq or in Bosnia. I saw some things, not very pleasant, but it always made me happy to come home, because I knew that the people in this country didn't have to endure those kinds of things. In that time, I had a family, I had some kids. I inherited a couple of them. One would be Nadia, you little brat. She likes to be called a military brat. Her dad, her real dad, who's here also, David, he's an Air Force veteran. I think he was in 1947, weren't you? But, so she's an Air Force brat. We're all very proud of her and what she's become. She gave us a grandchild, a little blonde-haired, blue-eyed beauty over there. She's shy. I had some of the same things that some of our other speakers had to say about Armistice Day, November 11th, and all that stuff. But thanks to them, I don't have to say that now, because I really don't like speaking in front of people. But one thing to be said about Veterans Day, it happens every year, November 11th, and on the 11th day, the 11th hour, the whole bit. But we are not the only ones that celebrate it. Other countries celebrate it as well. Canada, Great Britain, France, they all celebrate it. They call it something a little different, but it's always done November 11th. In 1954, Dwight Eisenhower changed the name of Armistice Day to Veterans Day. And as he said before, it is for all veterans living and dead. Okay. So the veterans of today, I want to say a little bit about them. Veterans in the United States come from all walks of life, all backgrounds. I met a young lady in the ROTC, cool. She wants to do either one of two things, fly or work in medicine. Great jobs, both of them. I did both. I flew and I worked in medicine. If you can do both, you're in good shape. But the veterans today have so much to overcome. They fight an enemy with no uniform, no distinct look about them. They have to guess all the time. We have some officers and veterans in jail for Fort Leavenworth for making the wrong decision about who to shoot at. And it's a very sad situation, but we're hoping that that will be resolved before long. We don't know how long we'll be in this fight. We were fighting it back in 1991. In fact, in 1984, my daughter and my ex-wife were at a restaurant. 10 minutes after we left, it was blown up by Al-Qaeda. We just barely missed it. So this has been going a long time. It may not end anytime soon. But, some numbers I want to throw out there. 16 million Americans who served in World War II, about 4,000, almost 500,000 are still alive today. 2 million veterans served during the Korean War. 3 million veterans served in the War on Terrorism. And 7 million veterans served in Vietnam. And I think just under 60,000 didn't come home. Did not come home. That's a lot of people. Some are still unaccounted for. Around 2,000, 2,500, I believe we're at. We're still looking. We'll never stop looking. Being a veteran has defined my life. Basically everything I do on a daily basis revolves around my service. I know that I can get up and walk with my head high and know that I did something good in my life. I helped people when they were hurt. I helped people when they were sick. And I served my country. One other thing I'd like to talk about is family. We don't always talk about veteran families. We have more than just the veterans. This part of the speech is brought up by the letter S. Does anybody know that show on TV for little kids? There's a guy. He says, today's letter is S. That word is service and sacrifice. That goes out to veterans and veterans' families. I was deployed a lot. My kids, my wife was home by themselves in a foreign country. I was stationed in England. They were there. I was off fighting the war. My wife, Lisa, could you stand up? She was 3 months pregnant. She was 3 months pregnant with our youngest daughter. I went away, and I didn't see her again until 2 weeks before she delivered. That was a sacrifice for both of us. Luckily, her parents stepped in and helped. It was a good thing. Not everybody has that. I've missed countless holidays, birthdays, just anything you can imagine. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was lonely, but coming home was always wonderful. I remember the last time I deployed, my little daughter, who was barely walking, came running up to me. It's a really fond memory. In this little red, white, and blue dress, holding a little American flag, running towards me with her arms out. It was beautiful. I'll never forget it. Then I'll talk about now, one last thing, is my military family. Those people were my brothers and my sisters. We lived in tents together. We maybe drank a little alcohol together. We had Christmas trees in our tents. We had all sorts of craziness going on in our tents. When I served, we had VCRs and movies. There was this one movie that we really loved. It was called Wayne's World. If you've ever seen it, it's kind of an anti-everything kind of movie. And that's how we lived our lives there. We had guys that could recite the words to that from beginning to end. But it was fun, and it was really great. I don't know what they do now, but I know you all have Skype and all these wonderful things. I wish I'd had that. I made really good friends with a lady, a telephone operator in Iowa, that I would call as much as I can to be able to call my wife and just spend a few minutes with her on the phone. It was a really wonderful thing to have then, and to be able to communicate now is even better, because that connection to your home and your family is the most important thing. That basically concludes what I have to say. I just want to say that I want to dedicate this day for myself to some good friends of mine who died in 2003, my close friends who passed away in a helicopter accident in Afghanistan. They're in Arlington right now, but to know that I spent my last flight in combat with them, to only lose them a few years later after I left, really breaks my heart. But I know they're in a good place now, and I want them to know that I'm thinking about them. Thank you.